This is Alfred Hitchcock Vertigo. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is a narrative-driven adventure that is inspired by the classic masterpiece film Vertigo from Alfred Hitchcock. We're actually getting two performance mode options here. There's performance and then there's quality. So quality looks like we're getting the full 4K at 30 FPS, whereas performance looks like it dips down to like 1440p at 60 FPS. It's kind of hard to tell because this game sort of has this like outdated sort of level of like mechanics and like visuals. But at the same time, it is nice that they did give us two graphical choices. So there's HDR support as well. Performance mode actually feels nice, and it wasn't too bad to look at. I was kind of going back and forth between the two modes a little bit to try to test them out, but like, I think performance just feels a little bit better, and yeah, I don't know if you're getting a super big upgrade for quality mode, even though this is just a light story interaction game, so you really aren't doing much. So in that type of situation, you might opt for a little bit better visually of an experience. But like I said, it's really diminishing returns on this particular offering. So this is sharing the same name as the, like I said, masterpiece film Vertigo, which is a film I really do enjoy, as I do quite a number of the Hitchcock movies. So this one does share that titling, but it really is its own sort of thing, where it's more about the inspiration of the themes thematically. This is like Vertigo, but it really has nothing to do with that film in terms of setting or really just the concept of where it takes place. It's just thematically sharing some similarities, and it's to kind of catch your attention, I think, a little bit, like it did for me, because I was like, oh wow, Alfred Hitchcock Vertigo, huh, as a game, interesting. And then you go to play and you're like, oh, what is this? But it's really intriguing. So the themes here really are based around obsession, which is what the movie is kind of based around as well. So the obsession of an individual that really is relentless, is focused, is working towards a particular goal, and it's the mystery around that that's really truly just so intriguing and, you know, kind of entertaining and capturing. I really did kind of like the story here, which is hilarious because the game itself is really quite awkward, as I think you've been kind of seeing with some of the footage. None of this should spoil anything to you. This is kind of just the opening bit of the game that just kind of sets the stage. It's actually quite long, like at least several hours kind of long. There's a lot going on here, and there are so many twists and turns. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. I actually just filmed the beginning of it because I'm like, okay, we'll go through this, and if I want to afterwards, I'll add audio, which is what I'm doing right now. So yeah, this game has some of the worst voice acting I have really ever seen in a game. The lip syncing is like completely off at times. The music is sometimes more loud than what's being said, so you can't really hear what's being said. There is all these really awkward animations. There's lots of padding with the game in regards to doing things very slowly. And then just like the presentation and stuff just isn't the best. Like, it feels really dated for this type of like light interaction heavy story game. And you know, even past that, some of the narrative elements don't structurally fully fit, but wow, this was one of the most interesting twisty turny kind of interesting psychological thriller little bit, I would say, games. Like, you'd be going one way and then it'll go the other way. Like, I always try to do like predictions or trying to like guess what's going to happen, and I got like some bits, like I got some ideas, but like this game constantly just throws you for like a loop where you're like thinking one thing is going to happen and this other thing happens. And then like the story itself, I think, was quite complete. It's not as insane. Well, it is insane. Like, what happens in the story, like over the narrative, is just crazy. Like, it is a crazy, crazy game about like just the wildest levels of obsession. And this beginning area just like really is calm compared to like what goes on, and the themes are very mature and very dark, and there is some messed up stuff that happens in this. So if you can't handle really intensive themes, this might not be the best for you, because there is actually like some sickening like type things that go on in this, and I was just like, wow. And you can kind of get an idea of how things are going to go, and you want to believe certain things at certain points, but you're still kind of like, is there like another curveball coming? Like, wow. So I don't know if the ending is just, the ending is almost tame compared to the insanity that like builds and picks up as you go through. I really do think there is like a bit of a masterpiece of a story hidden between this like really rough outer edge of a game. It's so weird because I'm like, the story here, like if you could fine tune this, redo like some of the dialogue, redo some of the voice acting in general. I will say though that the lady there, Faye, actually, well, I was initially like, oh, you know, it's just part of the bad voice performances. She's actually like the real standout, but it only makes sense as the story progresses, and then you're kind of like, oh, okay, so everyone else just has terrible voice acting. but she's actually interesting and well done from a voice acting perspective. It makes sense as you play the game. So it is largely focused around Ed Miller, a writer who's coming from this car crash, and this car crash has like a deep connection with an event, and you know, an event from his past, and you're kind of like largely this therapist kind of piecing together this broken web of mystery. And you know, Ed is suffering from vertigo, you know, hence the title, and he keeps talking about this wife and daughter, and you know, not a lot of it makes sense, and you kind of build and piece together the hidden secrets as these therapy sessions go on. But there's also lots of differing perspectives, which can, you know, some of it pads the gameplay in a weird way, and it's not quite as like tight as it could have been, which again, as I'm saying, I would really love to see this remade someday, because there really is a great twisty story here. Like, there's not too many games that do a good job of like really throwing you up for like a loop in one direction and then pulling you the other way, and then leaving all this mystery where you're constantly like, I was, you know, like things were kind of like really clear almost at a certain point, but I was still like, is there something more that's gonna go on? And it's just like, it's wild, honestly. It starts as such a simple thing where it's kind of like, you got this guy who's just sort of awful, but like, you know, is he telling the truth? Is there something hidden behind what he's saying? Is what he's telling the therapist accurate? What is really happening? And there's like all these themes of like trauma and just these dark upbringings and these problems from like history kind of coming into this modern time. And they do a really good job of setting it within the current era too, in regards to phones and whatnot, because a lot of, you know, structural things seem to struggle with keeping like phones and that, but they really do use kind of modern tech and a little bit of the outdoors to a degree, because, you know, this is like a bit of a cabin type house, escape house, right? But like they use the electronics in a way that really fits and feeds into the overall obsession themes. I was so intrigued by this game in so many ways. Like, it's really, really intriguing. And there's a great replay option too if you want to go back and get any sort of like achievements or anything you missed. It's not bad. And yeah, you know, there's a bit of loading in this, and you know, it's rough around the edges. But if you want an easygoing story game that you can kind of eat at over, you know, certain pieces of time, like this game is really quite something. Like, at times ridiculous, other times completely unsettling. And I don't want to get across that this is like some amazing hidden masterpiece. Like, it is rough around the edges. It's a little bloated, it's a little padded, it takes a little bit too much time. But I was really just absolutely hooked and going, huh, I can't believe I waited so long to finally dive into this one. I really like what they got going on here. So if you like kind of mysterious story games where there's just some crazy creepy levels of obsession involved, I think you'll quite like this. It takes a bit to get going, but once it does, I think you'll be really surprised by this and what it has to offer.